Hey there, folks, and welcome back to ShaveTalk, episode number 2. And today we have Rod and Mandy of Stirling Soap Company. Welcome, Rod and Mandy. How are you all today?
Thank you. We're good.
You're good. You're celebrating now 10 years. 10 years. And when was the date of the anniversary, 10 years?
It was actually our LLC in Texas was dated on the 1st of January is when it went into effect. We'd started making soap and had everything going forward a few months prior to that, but that was our actual date where the LLC for Stirling Soap Company took effect in Texas.
And it's been quite a ride, I would imagine, over the last 10 years, ups and downs. And I know it was rough sledding early on. In particular, there were lots of, as I understand it, thin times. You all have told me yourself. Can you talk about early on and maybe some of the struggles?
We started out in a rental house in Texas. Rod was still active duty, full time, obviously, and I was a full time government contractor. So we did this in our spare time in the evenings mainly, and we would cure soap on our upstairs guest bed because it had the insulation that we needed and everything. So we would carry these massive molds. And of course, you got soap that's still very much liquid that you're trying to carry upstairs and not spill it. And it was fun. We would have races on our kitchen table on the weekends for who could wrap soap the fastest, who could label, the bars the fastest, and did our grand opening, if you will, at Canton, at the trade days in Canton, Texas, and sold about 6 bars of soap. And
it was a disaster. It was embarrassingly bad.
I was 7 months pregnant, and we took our dogs up there. We actually put the walls on our little tent, and we slept on an air mattress pretty much outside, and it had rained all day that day, and it was a mess. We left early.
So this was day number 1. You sold 6 bars of soap?
Yeah.
Wow.
But we traveled, 2 hours or so each way to.
Canton was a little further than 2 hours. It was probably 2.5 hour drive each way. And then we didn't even cover the cost of our space at the trade days in Canton with what we sold. I mean, it was an utter disaster. And that's kind of when we went back to the drawing board, and I was wet shaving at the time. And that's kind of where, okay, what can we do different? It's like, well, I'm already using this shave soap. I bet I can make a better one. So maybe that's the play we take, and that's really where we moved into the shave.
Yeah.
So let me pivot to coffee for a little bit, because I know you all kicked off the roastery. What was it, last year or 2020? I can't remember now. It's been a while. How's that going so far?
I think it was a strong first year. It was below our expectations, but considering the time when we were launching a brand new sister company and everything, we were certainly blessed to have done as much as we did, for sure.
I do see it growing. It is continuing to grow month over month, and we're getting a lot more people who we get a lot of emails now. It's like, we should have trusted you on this earlier. We've never done this wrong with this soap. We should have known that the coffee you would be sending us would be top shelf as well. So hopefully that it turns into repeat customers the same way the soap and the aftershaves have as well.
Let me ask you, has anybody ever found your coffee business and then stumbled upon to the soap by mistake or something like that? No, not yet. You haven't been told, at least.
Maybe somebody locally, but no. Not online for sure. That's why we consolidated the website. We were already selling the coffee through the soap company's website anyway. So having the roastery's website in addition was simply just another upfront cost every month to have it operating. So we decided that we would, for now, combine the two, merge all of the products and everything onto the soap company's website.
I noticed the other day I was looking at the website and you were selling like grinders and French presses and all that. What all are you selling related to coffee besides just the roasted beans and so on themselves?
We've got hardware items, like you said, the French press, the grinders. These are burr grinders, which is why they're a little bit more pricey than, the little blade grinders that just chop the bean. This is a more uniform grind and gives you a more consistent cup of coffee. And we're also selling different types of pour overs and things like that. We're looking to pivot our hardware a little bit more, just to make it more inexpensive and things, and to cater more to what our customers actually use and not what we want them to use. We thought, we just need to do a little consumer education, because a pour over is such a good quality cup of coffee. A French press is a great cup of coffee and things. But we were I was a little ambitious, I think, in thinking that consumer education would just be a breeze.
Well, it is difficult, I'm sure. I got to ask about the iconic, in my view, green tubs, because you might know some people love them. Now, personally, me, I love them, and the reason why I love them is because they can't be missed. Like anywhere you have them, they can't be missed, and I know that's one of the reasons that you have them. But some people, they will say, "Oh, well, almost threw that in the floor there." But they'll look at this label here, Triumph, which is terrific, by the way, and they'll go, "Oh, it's got a purple label on the green tub." And that's ugly. It is one of the complaints that I get. And I always say, listen, man, the price is right. The soap is great. The scents are phenomenal. I own now, I told you the other day, Rod, 58, but I had 3 coming. So it's actually 61. Now I own 61. It's on my spreadsheet. And I just love them because they work, really, really well for me. But the green tubs are, I don't know if you would call it controversial, but I do hear people like, why do they put that peach label on the green tub? Has there ever been any consideration to going with something else, or is it just Stirling green for all time?
All time. It'll never change. It's when we were trying to figure out what to do with them, we knew from the get-go. I mean, if you recall, from the first probably 4 years we were in business, we didn't have tubs. We just sold the samples and the refill pucks because we thought that would be more sustainable. We didn't want people buying single-use jars, and that's one reason we have kept making the refill pucks, even though they're completely unprofitable. When we moved to the jars and we were trying to figure out what do we want to do, we thought, well, I mean, Stirling, Scotland was one of the most beautiful green places I'd ever been. And it's like, what else would we do with it except green? But also, I mean, we looked at it from a marketing standpoint, and we looked at the people that were already using, plastic style jars like we have right there. And they were all using the commercial off the shelf colors, either the clarified white or black cap, whatever it may be. And we knew that with the advent of shave of the day photos becoming a thing, and people showing off their shaved ends, there's never any mistaking that's a jar of Stirling soap.
You are 100% correct on that. And I know some people will be disappointed, but for me, I've never found any compelling reason to change it. I think one of the biggest complaints is people will say, well, I got a red brush and a red razor and the green just doesn't go with anything. And I know you had one tub recently, it might have been the hot apple cider, that was not green. And that gave some people some false hope. They were like, oh, and I was like, I don't think so. I don't think so. Don't bank.
Was it the Christmas?
Candy cane?
It was either candy cane or candy cane we put in the clear, didn't we? We do have some of the standard clarified jars that we use as a backup. And when you see those go out, it means that we're having supply chain issues and we don't have the green ones. The red ones we bought a few years back. We bought the red ones to use. We were going to distinguish our women's line a little better, but we have so many scents that are just plain unisex, and even some that are geared more towards women. We have a lot of men that like those fragrances, and it was just like, you know what? It's just green. So we use the red ones for holiday scents sometimes, and we sent a bunch. We sold some to Noble Otter last year so that he could put his night before soaps in there.
Mhm.
And then we may eventually do some more. The problem is getting custom jars, getting custom colors means I have to buy at least 5,000 of them. So, if I were to do one to match every label, I would have a pretty substantial warehouse full of jars.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. And I've always said when these conversations come up, I was like, look, if it causes the price to go up, I don't want it. I don't need just a fancy colored jar because I'm interested in what's in it. I do think the labels as they are fine. It's recognizable. It's very easy to figure out what it is. It's got a good side label on it. It's got all the required elements from my perspective. A lot of people have been asking about the stainless razor, your razor, stainless steel razor, which I like. Now, this razor was aggressive, regardless of which plate used, the standard or hyper aggressive. The question that I've gotten quite a bit over the last, 6 or 8 months is, will you ever make another run of these? How do you respond to that?
Probably not until we can afford our own CNC machine. We actually lost money on those, even selling them for relatively low compared to other mirror finish razors on the market. If there's just so many new entrants that they own their own CNC machine and they're not paying a shop for hours and labor and all that stuff to have the machine. So most likely, for the time being, they're gone. I do still have the ones. I don't know if everyone remembers the fiasco with the original company we had. They outsourced it to China without telling us, but they still had them engraved made in the USA, which is horridly illegal. So I still have 300 of those Chinese ones, and I may eventually release those at a very highly reduced price. I just haven't. I really don't want to do it right now and diminish what people have that actually paid for the American made ones.
Right.
And plus, I'll have to get in there and I'll have to grind off that made in the USA because can't sell it like that.
It's sad because it was actually a really good product. I mean, it was a solid razor. We took them home and tested them and things like that. And I mean, it was a decent razor, but not what we ordered.
Yeah, we wanted it to be made in the USA, and that was, like I said, we may eventually sell the Chinese ones, but it likely won't be until next year at the earliest.
Gotcha. One of I think before we've discussed this, and I'd be remiss if I didn't touch on it a little bit again, the Kong brush came along at a time when synthetic brushes hadn't quite taken off. There was the Blasson, which was about $60. There were Mula, which were $60, $100. And then the Kong brush came along, which you all put out. And also around the same time, Italian Barber put out one called Monster, which is very similar. That brush at the time, I don't think a lot of people understand, was 26 millimeters in a time where everything was probably 20, sometimes even 18. And it was sub $20, I want to say. I can't remember exactly. And you've mentioned before that brush was kind of important to sort of turning things around. How could you sort of characterize what that meant?
That was when we started selling those, they started trickling out in orders and things. But when yours came in, and then when a Shave Busta got his, he ordered 2. And he did that shave, and I've seen you can still see the pictures online where he's shaving with one on each of his cheeks, and they just went crazy. And that was a huge boost to our business. Gave us a little bit more legitimacy and things like that. And it was like you said, it was a fantastic brush. It was a great price. We weren't out to gouge. We looked at what the market was doing and other companies were doing and things like that. And we're like, we just can't put that price tag on it, and that kind of an excessive markup. So that's what made it affordable and everything. So that was,
I think one of the things that I'm not sure everybody understands about that brush was at the time, everything was at least triple the price in synthetic brushes, and the knots on those are very inexpensive, and they're just not all that expensive to make, but yet people were charging, pretty high prices for those brushes. After your brushes went out, the price came down and people started sourcing those knots and putting them out. But it wasn't until you did it that other people started doing it. And now you can go find synthetic brushes for under $30 easily every day, all day, every day. But at the time, you couldn't. They were triple that. And so I always credit you all and the other folks who were sort of early on board of setting that price at a reasonable level. And I really appreciate that.
Well, we were the first to come out with what you've called the Poisson killer. But we can't take all the credit for it. It actually, the old Wetshaving subreddit, they're the ones that actually found those knots first. And they did a group buy of them to put in their own knots and whatever. And when we realized that, hey, this is either this is the place that Poisson gets their knots from, or they have a fantastic facsimile of it. We need to jump on this. So, I mean, we took out I believe we took out a PayPal working capital loan for it, because at the time the minimum order quantity was 1,000 brushes, and I didn't have the money for that. So we took out a PayPal working capital loan, based on the success of that group buy on Reddit. And we jumped on those. And like I said, they sold well as soon as we got them in. But when you and Bustamante did the videos, I believe within 24 hours of each other, you guys did videos of that brush. That's where we, honestly, Chris, that's where we stopped being a hobby and started being a legitimate business.
The other thing about that brush too was it was larger than its counterparts at the time. So not only was it a, Poisson like knot, super soft, but it was larger. And we were like, wow, I think it was 26 millimeters, if I'm not mistaken. And everything was pretty small at that time. Now today it's 30 millimeter. No one even bats an eye. But back then, 18, 20 millimeters, 22 would have been considered large. And so it was really amazing. And the cost was stunning. And it opened everyone's eyes, I think, to the fact that, okay, we might be getting hoodwinked here a little bit. And I think to a certain extent, people are still being hoodwinked on Badger. But synthetics, at least, I think, it was a great thing. Whoever put that information out there, Reddit, yourselves, it was a service to the community, in my opinion.
No, you're right. I said, I don't like taking full credit for it, but like I said, because we did get the idea from the guys over on the Wetshaving subreddit. But we were the first company to take the leap on it, and you're right, it completely changed the synthetic brush market, and I don't think you'll ever see it go back up. I mean, prices always will go up, especially in a time like this, but at this point, if someone is paying $60 for a synthetic brush, this
actually wasn't, the Kong wasn't even our first brush. We had brushes from India.
No, they were China as well.
Oh, well, they came in. It was a little bit, it wasn't like, hey, let's jump on this and take this leap and everything. We'd done the brushes before, and the company had, the handles were hollow. And so the knots would just, as soon as they got wet, they would pop right off. And so we would have to break the knots away from the handle, cut a wooden dowel, glue that in, and then re-glue the knot back in. And so to take that jump for the Kongs, for me at least, I was like, oh, I just don't know. Like, we got burned on the last ones and everything. But Rod really was, he changed my mind, and he's like, we need to do this. So
it was a good call, and I will thank the good folks there in the Reddit group, as well as you all, for bringing that along, because it really did change things. And that's one of those things that I stay mindful of, because I remember when sometimes if you bought an Edwin Jagger synthetic brush, it was $80 or $100 even. It was absurd. We've talked a little bit, or actually you put it out in your newsletter recently, about price increases. And I was talking to Mandy a little bit earlier offline. And my personal philosophy in any hobby is it's sort of a shared cost burden between the company and the customers. Because what happens when things get tight as they are now, with the prices on everything rising, gasoline, bread, milk, whatever you're after, you have to start being choosy about where you're spending your money. So hobbies are a place that people cut very quickly when it's down to needs. And so I know that your increases have always been quite modest. And I know that you've always sort of figured out what is necessary, and you're not looking to extract every penny on every single product. You're not getting maximum out of every single tub of soap. Have you figured out where you're going to land yet? Or are you still figuring that out? And what's your thinking on that?
Everything's fluid right now. I mean, we're searching far and wide for solutions when it comes to suppliers, because it's not just the fact that everything's going up; it's becoming more scarce. We had a week last year, right in the lead up to Black Friday, where we had to stop making soap because we couldn't get tallow. We were completely out. We had another week where we had to stop making soap because we couldn't get sodium hydroxide. And now, the tallow that we're getting. They just sent us the invoice today. It's almost double what we were paying 12 months ago. The lye is well past double what we were paying 12 months ago. And it's not something, unfortunately, that I prepared for. When and she can attest to this, when we started our pricing model, we wanted to be as recession proof as possible and keep our prices low so that if there is an economic downturn, people are slower to give up Stirling soap than say they would be someone that's charging $4 to $5 an ounce for shaving soap. But what I didn't figure in this and accepting lower margins for higher sell-through is how susceptible we would be to inflation, because our margins are as tight as they are when our raw material prices go up. I mean, it puts the squeeze on us. So, but I mean, we're finding ways to deal with it, and it's not like January 1st, we started giving our guys healthcare, dental, and vision. It's not stopping what we're going to try to do here. We're having to look for creative ways to keep pricing down without sacrificing quality. And I think we've done a good job of that so far. I mean, like I said, in newsletter, there are going to be some minor price increases in 2022. It's unavoidable, but it's not. If we have to get to the point where we're charging $4 an ounce for soap, we'll shut down.
Stirling is something that I come back to all the time. And the only reason you don't see it more, quite frankly, is because people get tired of me using Stirling day after day after day. And I could go 2 months right now without repeating, just Stirling. I can't do it because people will get annoyed by me. But in terms of when I use it, it has everything I need. And so I'm very happy with the product. Now, later we'll have a question about formula, because that always comes up and people want to know. But for me, it's a product that's easy to use. The price is really, really fantastic. And there's an enormous amount of sense. Like, if you can't find something you like at Stirling, there's something wrong. You were going to say something, Mandy? I'm sorry.
The issues that we have, I think, more are about finding the raw materials at this point, as opposed to the price increases. I think a lot of people, because we're gonna keep the price increases as minimal as possible, but the times when we haven't been able to find things, especially lye, that's something that really really scares us, because we can't make the shave soap, we can't make bath soap, we can't make shampoo bars without lye. And the first two are our bread and butter. We actually sold more bath soap last year than we did shave soap, which is the first time that's happened ever.
Wow, that is a surprise to me. Let me ask, what scent do you have that hasn't sold as well as you would expect? Like the one that you really expected more out of that just hasn't taken off to the degree you expected?
Probably Intrepid Man.
Really?
It's based on the Creed original Santal scent, and it's been a slow enough seller that we're likely going to move it to a fall-winter seasonal. I thought, based on the number of requests that we had to do that scent, that it would sell faster than it had. But part of it may be the fact that we have so many scents, and everyone's, like you said, everyone can hopefully find something they like, but at the same time, when you've got 50 different varieties at any given time, chances are people are going to find some they don't like as well. So, it happens.
What scent would you say surprised you in sales? And you can't say Executive Man.
No.
No, that was a clear winner.
Deep Blue Sea on a small level. I thought Deep Blue Sea would sell well, but there's most months it's in our top 5. It sells really well.
It's a great scent, but its name isn't anything outstanding, or it's kind of basic. It wasn't anything like Campania, where it has a little bit. It was easy to come up with, and it was a Black Friday scent, I think. And so when we were going through a lot of Black Friday scent names and trying to create those, sometimes I won't say we don't try as hard, but we go for the easy, names, as opposed to something with a little bit more depth. So
what's the volume of business like today relative to what it was 5 years ago? So what's a day like in terms of your volume compared to 5 years ago?
5 years ago, 40 orders a day. We're probably triple where we were 5 years ago. And just in terms of order volume, which is,
awesome.
That's not bad. I'll take it.
What have you learned to do better over the years? How do you think you've gotten better? What are maybe one thing you could point to that you've clearly gotten better at over the years? Other than getting a haircut, because that's a great haircut you have.
Thank you. I'm very happy with it. On one front, I would say customer service. You learn to not be penny wise and pound foolish. There's times where something is, I don't know how to describe it. I forget who told me this. It was during an AMA though, but when you're dealing with a customer, you want them when they hang up the phone or navigate away from the email to say, wow, I'm very happy with how that interaction took place. I'm not just pleased with how my issue was resolved or how the conversation went. I'm blown away by how far they went to take care of me. And there's times that we failed at that, and there's going to be times where you're going to do it and it's still not going to be enough, and they're going to dislike you anyway. That's just part of customer service. But when dealing with customers now, I try to make any employee that we have understand that at the end of the day, this person chose to spend money with you, and they're a big part of the reason that you have a job, and you need to, until they give you a reason otherwise, you need to treat them with the utmost respect.
What would you like to do better than you are now? What things would you like to improve on, or at least a thing?
I'd like to become, she can talk to this more. She's got the expansion stuff for the women's line. I'd like to be able to reach more women.
More customers in general from outside of the wet shaving niche. We don't do any type of paid advertising. Typically, if we do, it's very few and far between. Almost all of our growth over the years has been completely organic, word of mouth, and things like that. So, how often do you talk? I'm sure you talk about soap with people more regularly, but the average customer, even a true dedicated hobbyist, might not be talking about wet shaving with many people. So, I would like every time I send out an email, I'm not squeezing that same fruit, every time.
Yeah, we'd like to be able to reach more customers who aren't aware that we even exist. I feel bad. I feel guilty. about people, such as yourself. And we have a lot of customers that do the same thing, that they may have a dozen, 2 dozen, 3 dozen, shave soaps, more than they'll be able to use in 5 or 6 years. And it's, you feel bad marketing to them and say, hey, we got this new scent. Do you want to come pick it up? Because I know you have enough soap. I would rather be finding someone who's still trudging along with a 5-blade razor, getting razor burn and ingrown hairs and hating their can of Barbasol and nothing against Barbasol. I used it for years, but that's what we need to get better at, is finding new customers and attracting them.
That's a great answer, because it really walked into my next question, which was, what can we do to grow the hobby side? And by growing the hobby, of course, we grow your business as well. And one of the things you mentioned briefly was women, and it is very much an untapped area. And it's difficult, I think, because in many ways, the hobby side of things is sort of a boys' club. And it's difficult for some women to come in and participate, because not all areas are safe spaces and spaces that they want to necessarily be in. And so I struggle myself with trying to figure out, how do we include more women? I think there's a lot of virtue in it. And I think they could bring a lot to the hobby, insight. The other part is, in terms of growing, I think Rod mentioned it. It's not about reselling to hobbyists constantly. It is about getting new people to come in all the time. And I think, quite frankly, I think some artisans are sort of looking the direction of marketing to hobbyists and getting as much as they can from them. And we're happy to, participate in this fashion. But long term, I think the way for any business or any hobby is to get more people involved. And so spreading it wider, having more products, having, and the area of women in particular is of particular interest to me, and I think a lot of people, but I don't know if anyone has figured out how to make it attractive, how to make it welcoming. I'm just not sure how best to go about it. I do know that, we have all the different forums and groups and spaces for discussions, and they're male dominated. And sometimes things go on in those spaces that aren't of interest to a lot of women. So I'm not sure how to go about it, but I would sure like to, make some progress in that area.
As a lady shaver, I like the fact that, Rod has those spaces, that it is like a gentleman's club and things like that. But like you said, I don't feel comfortable going into that world, even having, own a wet shaving company, being a lady shaver and everything. I've tried to think over the years of ways that I can outreach to other women and things like that. And really, shaving in general is just not something that women talk about. And, it's an inconvenience. And a lot of us have, small children and things like that, or you're just looking to hurry up and get out. You're not looking for that luxury experience, really. So that is definitely I won't say a stumbling block, but
Obstacle.
Thank you.
And now for one of the most important questions that we have. Rod, does anybody ever call you Hot Rod Lovin'?
I have so many nicknames because of my last name. Yes, Hot Rod Levin was one of them. What my old Army unit at Fort Huachuca that I was with for years, they had a whole list of porn videos that based off of the name Rod Lovin' that I would have starred in, and it was.
Yeah, don't repeat them today.
No, I'm not going to. But it's I've had so many nicknames over the years from and I told my dad, I guess once in my early 30s, I was like, did you ever think about it before you named me Rod Lovin'? What it was. And he's like, well, I guess it never really crossed my mind. So
I know. I noticed you've gotten into the realm of what I call mandals and candles and wax melts. How is that going so far? Now, me, I'm not a mandal guy, and mandal meaning candles for men. I leave that to the wife. But I know that some guys are into mandals, and obviously some ladies as well. Is that going anywhere thus far?
It will be as soon as we can get new jars. They sold as fast as we could make them leading up to the holidays. And a lot of the customers were female customers, and I think that's one thing we did right with them. We really didn't go after a lot of our cologne scents. We went after seasonal scents like the Christmas Eve, candy cane, hot apple cider, things that anyone can enjoy. And they sold as fast as we could make them. Unfortunately, we can't get the jars for them right now. So we're having, I didn't want to do it, but we had to reach out to a company in China, and we're having custom jars made specifically for us with our logo already printed on them. And then as soon as we can get them over here, we'll re-release the candles.
I have a viewer question here. Howard would like to know, what's your favorite roast that you sell? Which coffee roast is your personal favorites?
It depends on the day. Usually the breakfast blend is amazing. It's just a nice, easy drinking daily coffee. The Sumatra that we have in right now is also really nice. And the Tanzania, a lot of people think of Starbucks with Sumatra. They think of bitterness when you think of darker roasts and things. But most of the feedback that we've received has been that even the darker roasts are not bitter. You don't have to cover them up with cream and sugar. It's just a really nice cup of coffee. So
for me, it's the Colombia every day. I love the Colombian coffee is just fantastic. I don't know about their cocaine, but they do fantastic coffee, and that's my favorite.
Mike would like to know if you ever plan to bring back the tea tree shaving soap. He knows you have it in like bath bars and things like that, but I guess it's been gone for a while from the shaving soap selection.
Eventually it'll come back. It just is a limited time. When we were looking at the numbers a few years back, we realized that it had kind of just fallen off a cliff for sales. So when we'd make it and it'd just sit on the shelf, and you can't do that and remain profitable. So it was necessary to give it the axe.
We keep around the other products, the tea trees that did sell really well. I believe the Witch Hazel Aloe actually sells extremely well. The bath soap is really nice and things like that, but the shave soap just didn't hold its own.
What was your best seller of 2021? And Aaron asked that question.
Executive Man.
Still?
Oh my gosh! There's no competition really. They try. Wow. The other scents try, but they just don't get there.
So I know in years past, you all have even done white labels in the past. The question here, if I can get to it, also from Aaron was, do you ever consider doing collaborations with other artisans or vendors?
We've talked about it with a handful. It's just right now we most days we run around with it like a chicken with their heads cut off, trying to keep up with what we already have. And so taking on a collaboration is just we were supposed to have done something for TSN, the shaving market, I believe, Facebook group. And as we were working on it, she and I both came down with COVID, lost our sense of smell, and we were out from work for weeks. But even when we got back, we've been so far behind and I've been unable to get it going. I've had requests from vendors to do, specific soap collaborations for them. And eventually I'd like to be able to do it. It's just a matter of right now finding the time for stuff like that is non-existent. If I do something like that, it's taking time away from Mandy and our three sons. And that's just, it's not something I'm willing to do right now.
Or research and development for new product lines and things like that. Scent formulation actually takes a pretty significant bit of time if you're really dedicated to it and looking to do something
if I can, this one, it's just for anyone reading. There's plenty of scents. Even with our cologne based scents, we put a lot of testing into them before we actually release them. It's not just buying something off the shelf. I want to know how it actually goes into our soap and comes out, because soap's a terrible medium for fragrance to begin with, but then you have to test it. Okay, you have to have enough people to say, okay, is this going to burn people? Is it going to cause, skin irritation, things like that? So, and then when you start talking about doing something like boat drinks or Stirling Gentleman or Glastonbury, that is, something that we have, that's unique to us, that we created, there is I don't think a lot of people understand how much work it takes to actually craft a scent, which is why, and that's one reason you'll see, as like Chatillon Luxe and Will over in Barrister and Man that do exclusively nothing but scents that they've crafted themselves. You're pricing their labor and their research and development and stuff like that. It takes a long time.
Dominic would like to know if you ever plan on releasing more soaps in the sheep base.
Sheep's actually probably going to get cut this year.
Oh boy. Some people are going to be disappointed.
Mutton tallow right now is running me almost $10 a pound, which is over 5 times what we pay for beef tallow. It's just, I love the sheep soaps. They're my favorites, especially the bath soaps. They're so good to use, but I can't pay people to take the soap, and that's the point we're about to reach.
I can certainly understand that. Patrick wants to know why the move from Texas to Arkansas, and I believe Patrick was from Texas. So,
if it were up to me, we would still be in Texas. If it were up to her, we would still be in Texas. We moved back down here because after we got out of the Army, Stirling was our only source of income. We were below the poverty line by a long shot. For quite a while, we knew that if we were going to grow the company, we were going to need to lean on family. Emerson was 2 years old at the time when we moved. Mm-hmm. Emerson was just a toddler. We needed the support of family to be able to grow the company. And, we were out in Texas, out on an island by ourselves. We were right outside a military base, which is, military towns are transient to begin with. So we couldn't even really count on friends to be there, because the minute they come up with PCS orders, they're out the door. So it was a necessity, and the intent was always for us to come up here for a few years until we were on more solid financial footing, and then move back down to Central Texas. But unfortunately, the boom that's gone on in Central Texas means that commercial real estate is through the roof right now, and we just can't justify it, given that 99% of our sales are online.
Doug would like to know if you have any plans of revisiting deodorant.
We're revisiting it right now. We're testing and tweaking formulas, but it's going to be something that we're doing with the hopes that prices go back down soon. A lot of the ingredients that go into the deodorants, I can't afford to buy in a 55-gallon drum, just simply because it would go rancid before we could sell it. So it's so expensive to make.
The next question here is about ingredients in your formulas, and Dan and Alfonso. Dan wanted to know if you ever plan on making a soap without almond oil, and Alfonso wanted to know if you ever plan on making soap without lanolin.
Probably not. The glacials don't have almond oil. The unscented with beeswax doesn't have almond oil or lanolin. However, we have so many options to begin with. If I start adding different formulas to meet every single person's taste, I just have to accept that those people are not going to be my customers. And the fantastic thing is, it's the golden era of wet shaving. There are so many different formulas out there that are all fantastic and so many scents that are fantastic. And I can't be Burger King. It would kill me.
It's the same thing with we accept the fact that vegans aren't going to buy our products either. Even the ones that don't have animal products, simply because there are animal products in the facility where the other ones are made. So we tried in the beginning to be a have it your way kind of company, and we realized pretty quickly that you can either do both things halfway or in a mediocre kind of way, or you can do one thing really well.
Makes sense. Sig from Greenland wanted to know if it's the tallow in soaps that keep them from going dull. And I'm not exactly sure what that means, but he says when he gets vegan soaps, because it's a long transport, so it's 6-8 weeks before he gets him stuff. And the term he used was dull. So I'm not entirely sure I understand the question, but I'm asking just because he asked.
I'm honestly not certain. My guess, though, is that it would be something in the individual manufacturing processes from the various companies that's causing whatever phenomenon he is referring to. But I don't know of anything in tallow that would keep scent or appearance from changing.
The ones that don't anchor, we call it anchoring. The ones that don't anchor well are typically your citrus essential oils. And if you can pair those with a fragrance oil or something like that, then that helps it to anchor. But I don't know that any animal products would be necessarily considered an anchor.
John wants to know if you're ever bringing back just simple, regular old lime.
This spring.
Every time we pull this scent, every time, grapefruit is the same way, Nag Champa, British leather, we pull them and people beg us, where are they? So
it'll be back this spring.
It will be. For how long? We don't know.
Pitt wants to know why only certain scents are available in the EU.
EU certification is a very long bureaucratic process. It's not inexpensive, and to take on that risk, you have to be certain that the scents are going to be they're going to have a good sell through, in whatever market you're bringing them to. Because if we go through the trouble of getting Executive Man aftershave, getting Executive Man post shave, getting Executive Man shave soap, that's 3 separate certifications. So whatever it is that you're going to certify, you better make sure it's going to sell through, or you've just wasted your time and money. I am hoping that we can start bringing over more scents soon, and I'm hoping we can start adding stuff like beard balms and beard and pre-shave oils over there. But for now, it's completely going to depend on sales.
And Lucas asked a question that I get a lot with respect to Stirling, and I'm going to say some before I even ask the question. Stirling, and I use enough soaps to know, so people trust me on this. If you lather it properly and you get the best out of it, you will achieve all the slickness and performance needs that you need in terms of the shave. And by that, I mean slickness, cushion, glide, whatever quality you want in terms of the shave, you will get it from this soap. And now to the question. Are you considering a new base with more slickness or additional oils and what have you?
Yep.
Yeah, that's what the answer, in case you didn't hear it, because it was a quick answer, was no. And for me, it's a great answer, because I know what that means to me is the price will continue to be good. I realize that, a lot of people have to make increases, but it will remain affordable, and it will remain something that at least it's on the radar of people, or at least they have a shot at it. Because I do know some people who just can't afford to buy soaps that are $30 a tub. It's just not in their wheelhouse, but they can afford to buy something that's $14 or $15 every now and then. And that's one of the things that you all have always been committed to: good value, to get a very good product to consumers for a very good value. And I own more Stirling than any other brand, and it just is. It's a fact. And the reason why is it does all the things I need it to do. I have noticed personally, and this is just me talking, not you, over the years, there's been a tendency in the industry for artisans and soap makers to really put a lot of marketing into post shave. And for me, that is something that's impossible to prove, impossible to validate. There's no way for me to measure that in any objective way. And so I always say, if you're looking for post shave, use a post shave product you're going to put a balm on your face. It's going to stay there. It, from my perspective, has a better chance at giving you conditioning than a soap that you're going to rinse off your face, and it's going to be there for a very limited time. That is not to say that the soaps can't provide some moisturizing effect, but for me, I'm well known for saying, if you want oil of Olay skin, use oil of Olay. You have any response to that?
Well, I mean, to an extent, I agree. I mean, there are, and I'm not denigrating anyone that puts a lot of exotic ingredients in their soap, but I'm the same way. I enjoy putting on an aftershave splash. I enjoy putting on a balm, or on days when it's chilly here, I'll put body butter over my whole head, and it keeps me from drying out and feeling flaky throughout the day. But for us, it's partially because it's an affordability issue, but I don't think I would be doing my customer base right, who has supported us all these years and bought so many different soaps, to all of a sudden come out with a new recipe for shaving soap. I mean, because FOMO and fear of missing out is real. I mean, you're gonna, if we were to put out a new soap base, I would fully expect that a lot of our customers, even if they already have an Executive Man jar, they're going to buy another jar of Executive Man in the new soap base because they want to try it. And I just don't. For me, that's not something I'm really keen on going through.
There are some soap bases that I've tried personally that are more drying, shave soap and bath soap. So, and I don't feel like ours is that, because we have a little bit more of a leftover fat content in those products, but it's more for protection and things like that. And
our leftover fat is completely shea butter. I mean, we actually, there's a subtle but important distinction between, most people just call it a super fat, but what a lot of people do, and we used to, it was just use a lye discount. So you mix all your oils in, you put the lye in, and if you've got 3% leftover oils, it's going to be a mix of whatever oils is in there. So we make the shave soap in a 2-part process now, to where we actually make the shave soap with 0 lye discount, and then we add in melted refined shea butter, so that the leftover post shave, the non-saponified oil that is in that soap, is completely shea butter. So you're not getting tallow, castor, almond oil in there. It's the unsaponified fat is purely from the shea butter.
But if you truly want that post shave feel, then you use the post shave products, like you said.
Yeah, I think that's the most effective way. I'd like to say, while I can drive a nail with a staple gun, I don't want to. I can use a hammer and drive it far more effectively. So for me, post-shave products are made for that purpose. And in particular, balms and skin elixirs and whatever you want to call it, designed for moisturizing. Almost all of them, you put them on your face and you keep them there. You're not rinsing them off. You're keeping them there. And to me, anybody who has needs in that area, that is the most effective way to meet the need there. I think that shaving soaps has certainly gotten better over the years. I don't think there's any question about that. But honestly, I have soaps, on the shelf there from 10 years ago. I can get that out and have a perfect shave with no problem whatsoever. I think some of the soaps now, the direction they've gone is it's a very weighty and dense lather. There's been some changes in the way soaps lather, but honestly, if you were to ask me right now, are my shaves and skin condition better using all these new products than they were 10 years ago? The answer is no. My shaves were great then. They're great now. I do appreciate all these options and the scents and all the work that everybody's pouring into it. But if you were to just ask me if I take the most expensive soap there is with all the exotic ingredients, do I achieve a better result? I do not. It is largely the same. And the other thing I think is there's sort of price bias that goes both ways. People make assumptions that a good value in terms of price on a soap makes the soap somehow inferior, which is for the most part not true. And people also assume that a high price makes it superior. And sometimes, it goes the other way. Some people will only buy inexpensive stuff and then they balk at higher price stuff. So a lot of people they're all over the place, but there are biases both ways. And so I would ask people just to consider that, try it, and keep an open mind. And I do have people sometimes that will say, I didn't think Stirling was sick. And then excuse me, not sick. You have been sick because you had the COVID, but not right now. Slick. But I watched your lather tutorial and now it's perfectly slick. And I'm like, yes, you have to lather the soap properly. You got to get moisture in it. And I think that's the biggest mistake that people make. And I used to make sort of a pasty lather myself. And it wasn't until I started straight razor shaving that I started really adding more hydration and the slickness comes along. So from my perspective, you're in safe hands with Stirling. I own more of it than any other brand for a reason. It's a great value. It's a great soap, great selection, obviously great people. I got to ask, what's next for you all?
You had it on Facebook and Instagram last time ago.
Well, we're going to be doing face masks this year. Hopefully, we're going to be doing beard waxes that have a little bit more hold than the beard balm, beard butter, and pomade. We are going to work on deodorants, but I'm not promising anything in that category at all.
Bath bombs. The big thing is on a hardware where, we've got, we make all the DOP kits. The travel kits are not. The travel kits we have made from us, but the actual canvas and leather DOP kits and the all leather DOP kits, we sew them here. The patch hats and everything and the beanies, we sew them here, and we're adding on to that. We're getting ready to start, throwing our own mugs and shaving bowls.
Okay.
So that'll be another thing that we can say, hey, this is a made in the U.S. by Stirling Soap Company product. So we'll have, custom, or not custom, but we'll have handmade shaving bowls and mugs as well.
And we're also on the storefront side. We hope to have a new storefront appearance, I'll say. We're sticking with our web host, but we're updating and upgrading a lot of things this year, hopefully here in the next month or so, if everything goes well.
How have you been received in the local community there since starting the soap business and now the coffee business?
They don't like us.
That's not true.
No, we have a lot of really good people here that support our business. We have a lot of people who have become close friends, and but we also it's at the end of the day, it is a small town, and there are a lot of people that still do and will always see us as outsiders and aren't interested in what we're trying to do.
They don't appreciate us modernizing their downtown the way that we want to modernize it, and they would rather stick with the status quo. And but there are plenty of people here that have made known, and they support us not just in their words, but financially buying our products and things like that. So we're grateful for that.
What would you like people watching today who are maybe they've never bought Stirling and they're thinking about it, what would you like them to know about you all or your business just generally?
We're not perfect, but we try to do what's right. We try to do right by our customers. We try to do right by our employees, and we try to take what we've been blessed with and do some good with it. Like I said, we're not always perfect for that. There's times where I just want to throw my hands up, move out in the middle of the Ozark forest, and become a subsistence farmer and hunter gatherer. But we for all our faults, we do try to do some good with the money and the business that customers give us.
Well, thank you so much, Rod and Mandy, for joining us. I'm wishing you a lot of success in the future. It's been really nice sort of growing up with you in the hobby, because I remember when I first started, I did not like Stirling at all. And that changed dramatically because of your hard work and, making changes as necessary. And I really appreciate you. And I am a big fan of Stirling for a reason. So thank you so much. I really appreciate you.
Thank you.